And we are live.
Okay, guys, welcome. So, my name is Shannon Morris. I'm from Interactive Payroll Solutions. I've been a programmer for a couple of years, few years. This is about me. This is about me. So, I've been doing development from 94, a little bit before that, but 94 was when a company decided to actually give me money to write code. So then I became an official developer. So since 96, I've been working on a vertical market application called Interactive Payroll System. And from the years, we've moved from DOS, like old DOS, blue screen and stuff. And it would later move to Fox Pro for Windows and then to Visual Fox Pro. And then over the last 10 years, I've been incorporating more C# stuff into our applications. So we've written some applications that kind of take advantage of our Fox Pro library. Because you can imagine, this is a software that's been around for like 20 years, and it has evolved over the years. So we have a lot of code that we kind of want to reuse to do other stuff. So we've written things like an employee portal website, all done in ASP.NET. But it taps into the data layer from our Fox Pro application. So all the data, all the pulling of data and queries are done all from Fox Pro, and data is sent back to ASP.NET. We also have an interactive data analytics program that has a web interface, a desktop interface, and a console app, all written in C#, but the data engine for that is all in Fox Pro. Again, we're using existing code that we have from applications. So in my session today, we're going to look at some concepts or approaches that we took in consciously uncoupling our data from our reports to build these type of applications. I attend Fox Pro conferences also. All right, so let's get into this. Why should we spend time on reports? I think that reports are probably the most important part of an application. I see it like almost the end result of an app. So we write these complex apps that process and massage our data, and we therefore need a medium that displays these beautifully cultivated data, and that's the job of a report. In one of our applications, we have like 50 screens, but the application has like 150 reports. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys have apps like that, right? We have more reports than screens. How many of us think that reports are like very important, or our reports are just an afterthought in our application? Important, right? Afterthought? Nobody? Okay, good. Yeah, so therefore reports are kind of very important in our application. So we spend a lot of time writing reports, and that led us to our kind of methodology for kind of making writing our reports a lot easier. All right, we're also going to talk about using Excel as a reporting layer, and using C#, to kind of dump reports. So Doug had done a session last year about advanced Excel, where I realized that some of the ideas that Doug had discussed were kind of some of my ideas. And I was wondering, how did Doug do that? How did Doug get into my head and do these exact things? So I thought, okay, maybe I'll show my way, which is slightly different from Doug's way, of how we achieve sending our reports to Excel. And if time permits, we're going to look at a real-world example that we use different reporting layers, Excel and C#. Okay, so why should we spend time on reports? So as I said, reports are important. They convey information in clear and concise formats, making it easy for stakeholders, team members, or clients to understand findings, progress, and recommendations. So let's look at the job or goals of a report. They serve as an official record of activities, right? Decisions and plans. So they can be essential for future reference or for accountability, like payslips or access logs or government filings. Um, well-prepared reports can sometimes provide data and insights that are crucial for making informed decisions, like comparing budgeted data to actual data. Reports can also ensure transparency in the processes and decisions, therefore holding people accountable for their actions and outcomes. And by accountable, I mean more serious things like filing stuff to the government. Um, Accountability can also get you in trouble with the law. So reports they're kind of important sometimes. So whether it's a business report, a research report, or a financial filing, or any other type, the goal of a report is to provide clear and accurate, useful information to the intended audience. But I mean, that's all nice and proper. But most importantly, guys, what do you think is the real purpose or object of a report? To make us look good, right? There's nothing better than hearing the oohs and ahs when when you've displayed a report that you just spent several days getting the stupid thing to work how you wanted it to work. And you can spend a lot of time working on a properly designed report. And the awesome thing about programming is that once you get it to work, it will always work. Sometimes, right? But maybe it would if those unknown humans aren't involved. But if it wasn't for them, our reports would always work. So there could be an argument that the report viewers or recipients are the most important, if not the real target users of your application. So you need to ensure that your report creation process is easy and adaptable as possible. And a part of that approach is uncoupling the task of data gathering from the presentation. So let's get into that. So when we uncouple our data from reports, what we're getting the following benefits. We're getting flexibility. So it means that you can use the best tools for pulling and presenting their information independently. This allows each layer to excel at its specific function. And we'll look at some of those examples later. Data integration. Because the data is separated, reports or dashboards can incorporate data from multiple sources, therefore providing a more comprehensive view. Data preservation. Data can be maintained while the target systems continue to evolve or change. Single source of truth. The data layer becomes the authoritative source of reporting, ensuring consistency and reliability. You can also build on supporting data because you know the source has already been validated. System independence. Replacing or updating one layer doesn't disrupt the other. And this is an argument why maybe reports, if possible, should be source agnostic. Data reuse. You can build upon data method from another source. Like you have a report that does a detailed listing. You can pull that data and generate a summary report from that. And also, it makes our lives easier. Now, sometimes customers do not know what they want, and it's our job to help them figure it out. A client may say to you, I want a simple report of people who are not at work for any given day. And you say, what about those who are on vacation? And the client is like, yeah, okay, don't include them. What about those on sick? They're like, sure, don't include them. Maternity or paternity? Yeah, okay, sure. So what you said to clients is that what you really want is a report of unapproved absences. So we as programmers have to sometimes guide the clients in figuring out exactly what they want for their requests. So a simple report for our client may end up being a little bit more complicated than one would initially think. And clearly, most of the work involved in that is figuring out where do you get the data from? How do you pull that kind of data? So, like most reports, the data is the driving part of that. So, let's look at the data layer. We need to design, sorry, let's go back. We need to design a report. We need to design a structure that allows us to pull and gather the data properly. And at this level, you're thinking not just about the target report, but the possible uses of the data. So let's look at that. Let's look at getting the data. So that involves pulling the data from various data sources, right? That involves opening tables, running queries, gathering the data. Processing, so manipulating that data to give the client the end result, or storing these in a temporary file. That will use, and we use these temporary files as a source of our data, or a source of our report rather. And therefore, cursors are the perfect candidate for something like this, right? Because when you use a cursor, you can pull the data into these temporary files and therefore close the original files, right? Means that the files are then open for other people to access, like especially in a multi-user environment where several users are pulling data from various from one system. Having your data dumped to a cursor allows that you can pull the data quickly, process it, store it in a cursor, and the original files are free for whatever they want to do. As I call it, they can continue to live their merry lives. Okay. So I love cursors, right? As you can tell. I think cursors are a friend. They allow us to store data to a virtual table that Foxpro manages. We can use long field names, just like in a table and database container, use index tags, and the best thing, we don't have to worry about cleaning up. How many of us use cursors in our day-to-day processing in our apps? Everybody loves cursors, right? They're great. How many of us use them for reports? Okay, great. Okay. So, especially in a multi-user environment, cursors are really, really good. So imagine if you have a massive report that has like 1,000 pages and you don't use cursors, right? And you're opening the tables to process that data. And in the meanwhile, someone else wants to pull something from the system, but they can't because some of the files are if they want to pull something that requires exclusive locks to the file. You can't do that because the tables are involved in pulling a report. So using cursors will help us to prevent messages like these, right? So you can pull your data, do your stuff, and move along. So let's look at building our cursors. We have some methods that we guys are probably used to. You can do the cursor yourself, right? A simple cursor statement, create cursor, blah, blah. You guys do this all the while, right? And then insert the data. Have you guys used this to create reports? How many of us do that? Okay. So I tend to do this when the data is not that straightforward to capture, where it's a little bit more complicated and you kind of have to build it yourself. Or sometimes when the report layout is kind of tricky and I use a manual cursor to build the data for the report. And this is the most common way with a query, right? So we open our table, we run our query, and then we generate the data. And this is probably the most popular method, right, guys? Yeah. And we could even do that for multiple tables. To pull multiple information into multiple cursors. And if you guys have noticed, I have a function called open table. And that's not a new Foxpro function, unfortunately. I use this function to handle pulling the data efficiently. How many of us have a function that opens our tables like this? How many of us just use? Okay, all right. So some of us just use. All right. So Open Table will take care of the mundane task of selecting an available work area, opening the table, but first checking to see if the table is already opened, and if it was, selecting that work area, setting an order tag, or even opening a table under a different alias. But most importantly, it handles errors gracefully. So if for some strange reason the table or the SQL view couldn't be open, you don't have issues. Open table returns true or false if it works. Let's take a look at it. All right. So you guys all use Project Explorer? No? Yes? No? No? This is an awesome tool written by Doug. Yeah.
I need to.
Yeah. So I mean, since I've been using Project Explorer, I don't use the native Fox Pro project manager anymore. It's so much more efficient. And there's a handy add-on in it. And if you guys notice this, that allows you to search for any function by typing any part of the name. So with the regular Fox Pro project manager, it was like in alphabetical order. You had to like scroll down and you couldn't type by name. If you type O and then P, it jumps a code file that starts with P. This little add-on that I wrote allows you to search for anything in your project with any part of the name. So let's look at our open table function. Sorry, I heard a question. Rick, you had a question?
Is that download available with the project manager?
I think Doug releases it, right, Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anybody tried this add-on as yet? You all should try it. It's awesome. I find that I don't spend my time searching for a program or a port. I just type it here. Especially if your project has like hundreds of files. This makes it so much easier. All right, so let's get back to Open Table. Simple function, we send the table name if we want to order, if we want it exclusive or an alias. And this checks to see, was it actually used? If it was, just select it. Do you want it exclusive? And it wasn't open exclusively before. Well, close it and reopen it as exclusively. But if not, if it's exclusive, open exclusively. If not, use it. If there was an order, set it. And because it's not try catch, if something happens, it jumps here. So you can have your super duper error handler handle it here. And then this returns the status if it's open or not. Yes, question.
Yeah, I inherited the open table when they hired me.
Yes.
And so it returned 0 means it couldn't open the table. 2 means it was already open. You know that.
Yeah.
And it won't set the order to the Patrick tag if it's already set to it. So that was this clever thing with it's called G open table, but it's the same thing. I inherited it, and I pretty much didn't have to change it too much.
Yeah.
Gives you a number because he wants to close the table he opened if this thing that's drilled way down from the top open it, but if it's already open, he knows to leave it alone. So it's pretty clever how he returns the integer 0, 1, or 2.
Yeah. So I return true or false because either table is opened or not. If it wasn't opened, then how should the program react or move on from this? I find that when you use, you kind of have to do a lot of error catching yourself to figure out what happened if something went wrong. All right. But this code looks easy, right, guys? Pretty understandable.
Yes, very beautiful.
All right. So let's go back. But if not, you could always just use, right? As some of you actually do. All right. We also have close table. And some of us just say use in alias, right? That kind of has some issues also. And let's take a look at how we handle that in our application. close. Pretty straightforward, right? It checks to see if the alias was already used, and if it was used, then close it. But if it wasn't used, okay, just continue on. So no foul, no issues, just move along. And you can also not send an alias, and we'll just close the currently open alias. You guys do something like this also?
I wrap the use inside the select function
itself. Yeah.
So then I don't have to bother checking to see if it's
okay, great.
If it's open, it closes it. If it's not open, it doesn't return any errors.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Good. And this tells me if it was closed or not. All right. All right, so now we can open our files. So this is how we kind of use it. We open our table, and then we return true if it's opened. And therefore, because we did it this way, we're not bothering to waste time trying to open other files if one of them failed by using this logic. Make sense, guys? And this is one of the advantages of not using use. All right, so we open our files, and then we start to process our data. So we're pulling data for our report. So we run our query, and then we continue. And you could do multiple queries like this, and then we clean up. So cleanup is very neat because if the file was never opened, no harm, no foul, just continues along. All right. So a part of separating your data is moving information to your data layer. How many of us have done reports that require running or rolling total? And how do you typically do that? In the report writer, right? In the Fox report writer. It has a great tool to do that, which is this. But if you do it this way, guys, where is that data? Where's that rolling total? It's only in the reporting layer. It's not in the data layer. So if you wanted this data in Excel, you have to find a way to do it in Excel. If you wanted it as a PowerPoint listing, you have to then do that all over again. So it's something to consider when you're separating your data. It's about moving things that are only in one layer, like the reporting layer, and moving it over to the data layer. All right. Moving to the data layer also means that other reports now have access to this rolling total. And if you wanted this data in C# on a JSON file, it's in the data layer. Right? So guys, how do we go about moving this data to a data layer? Right? We would write a function. Okay, this is how we do it in Fox Pro in the reporting layer. So let's look at how we'd actually do this in our data layer instead. So I'm gonna look for my running. Oh, there it is. Running total. So this is a generic function that we would have written. We send the total column, the running total column, and a procedure here that then generates a column with the running total into our cursor. Make sense? Looks easy? So this is one example where I'm saying that let's move our stuff from the reporting layer to the data layer to ensure that everybody has access to it later on. Okay. Right, let's move forward. So,
I have a question. Was that a report variable in a PRG? Was that what you just showed us?
So it's not a report variable. So because they're not using the reporting layer to produce this
But it was
information.
having the calculation.
So we're doing the calculation in the data layer and storing that in our cursor.
Okay.
So the cursors are part of our file. So we're saying pull our information, send it to our cursor, have the cursor have a column that has a running total,
Right.
and then use this function to populate the running total. Right. Okay.
I couldn't see it quickly enough.
Okay. All right. There's a white paper about this
Thank
also.
you.
All right. So the key takeaways from this, the data layer is the most important aspect in this scheme. At this level, you're not only thinking about the target report, but other possible uses of this data. Having a custom or open table will make the mundane task of opening and closing files easier and safer. And although we didn't talk about it, you could consider using SQL pass-throughs to access data through an open table function also. I talk about more about that in the white paper. Consider using cursors. Sending your data to a cursor or cursors, even if the report is a simple 2-column report, always ensures that you are holding onto the original sources of data for the shortest possible time. And then consider using generic functions to move reporting layer calculations to the data layer. And of course, always make sure you keep behind yourself and original sources of data, they're always closed. Any questions about the data layer? Yeah.
Sean, I've got a question. So obviously the thing you're showing us is a fairly simple use case of,
Sure.
of a single total in your data layer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in more complex reports, you're going to end up having sort of perhaps multiple calculated or statistical values that
Correct.
you need to generate.
Yeah.
And if you're the function you showed us again, and just I'm assuming it's for the sake of illustration,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a scan loop.
Yeah.
Doing one thing.
Sure.
So when you need to do multiple things, have you come up with more efficient strategies for being able to handle that so you don't have to call 10 different scan loops through the same data set to pre-process your data so that all of your calculated columns end up with what you need for ultimately to put into your reports?
So I tend to do a scan.
I'm sorry. I don't.
Sure.
You might want to repeat that because the online did not hear a word I said.
That was a long question.
It wasn't long. So let me see if I can split it. If you have, basically your strategy here is I'm pre-processing my data.
Yeah.
So I have my data, I want to generate.
So I'm pre-processing the data. Mm-hmm.
And then I may have one or more things that aren't in my database that I can create ahead of time.
Sure. Right. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So what are the strategies for doing that in a more efficient manner?
I mean, so I tend to do it the easiest way possible with that. Repeat the question. So how can we more efficiently process this to add this external calculated data? So I tend to use a scan because I want the easiest way to write this data. I don't want it to be too complicated because you could write a query to figure this out, right? But I'm writing the function to be as generic as possible for any other future use. So I find a scan is the easiest way to just go through and just write that data. So I may have something for running totals. I may have something for count. I may have something that the typical FoxPro report environment would provide. But I want to ensure that this data is also in the data environment. So sure, there are fancier, easier ways to do it, but I find keeping it simple using this method, make sure that it works with anything that you have in the future for totaling stuff like this. Okay?
Yeah, I agree 100%. The scan loop is really simple to use, particularly if you're a FoxPro person.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
But replace field 1 with value 1, field 2 with value 2, and so on
Sure.
and so forth.
It does.
Ways to abstract that kind of goes to refactoring.
Exactly. And by the way, I did refactor some of this code after the first presentation. So you had a question?
I was worried about the speed of getting all my data ahead
Sure.
of time. The speed of having to do all this extra work. If I have 5 things I'm always totaling, tons, counts, dollar amounts.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if they could count all 5 in one loop instead of 5 loops.
Sure, but remember, you're trying to write something generic. So this function is generic. It's not just for this specific use case, not just for the specific report, but to work with any other type of data that you have later
I like
on.
it though, because if it's outside the variables, it can live somewhere and have a lot of
Exactly,
use
right,
case, whatever the term is.
right. And you try to make it as generic as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dave?
Also, the case you're working with cursors at that point, it's going to be a lot faster.
Exactly, and that's why we love cursors, because writing to a cursor, it's much easier and much faster to write this data than to a table, right?
I think the calculation outside the report is faster because if you do some total numbers of pages, you run twice through your report.
That's true, yeah.
Count twice.
Right, right. So Lutz says doing it outside of the report environment is actually faster. Yeah, I agree. All right. Any more questions about the data layer? Okay. So let's look at our reporting layer. All right. So as we said before, a lot of programmers tend not to put much effort into designing their reports. And although the data layer thinks it's important, nobody ever sees that. I'm sure it does the hard work of sourcing, processing, and collecting the data, but the reporting layer is this actual star, right? That's the one that the clients will actually see. And your real finds will actually see the results of that. So what are the purposes of the reporting layer? It's a visual medium that doesn't have to only be in FoxPro. We'll talk about that shortly. Depending on your application, on your application's purpose. Well, let's continue. When presenting data, you should consider the targets for your report. It's the printed report. So does it go on a laser printer? Or heaven forbid, it goes on a dot matrix printer. I mean, actually, even do we have those anymore, guys? You guys use dot matrix printers in here? Oh, seriously? Wow. Yeah. No.
I don't. My customers do.
I remember when we were converting our customers to move from our DOS app to our Windows app, people are like, what about my Epson DFX 5000 printer? I need to print on the green and white paper. And we're like, guys, this is the future. Yeah, you actually need to move forward. And but eventually they accepted laser printer. So what I'm saying, think about the target of the reporting layer. Are you creating a report that need high resolution graphics, or is it going to DFX 5000 dot matrix? So think about that in your layer. And of course, most people will not use your application, but a lot more people are going to see the reports from your application. So try to present the data in a clear and understandable format, because you want to ensure that they know how good you are at this. Right? So reports gives you another medium to kind of show the quality of your work. So they're not seeing your app, but they're going to see your reports. So make sure they look good. All right. Other things to consider. Design a clear layout. Use a logical and consistent layout with clear headings, labels, and white space to make the report easy to read. Select appropriate fields. Only include necessary fields to avoid clutter and ensure focus on key data. Use visual elements like incorporating charts, graphs, or images to enhance data visualization and comprehension. Include interactive elements, add hyperlinks, drill down capabilities, and other interactive features to enhance user engagement. Think about and follow design pattern. Adhere to guidelines for reporting design, branding, and style. And stay up to date with new trends, right? Familiar yourself with new best practices by attending FoxPro conferences. Okay. So let's look at a typical report in the report designer, right? Our reports look like this, right, guys? You're used to this. Are there any other ways to create reports in Fox Pro?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a table.
With a table. You mean manually? All right, no, that's lots of fun. Are there any other visual designers that you guys know that you use to create reports?
We could take the cursor that you've created and make it into an Excel with Greg Green's tools or
Sure.
PDF with XFRX. Like there's all sorts of other things you can do with it.
Okay, cool. Right, exactly. Yeah. So this is not the only way to create a report. All right. And this is an example of a not so simple layout. Right. So it has more than one flowing columns. How do you approach a report like this? Kind of tricky, right? HTML. Yeah, so we actually did this report in the Fox Pro report designer, but we use a lot of processing of the layout in the data environment. I'm sure someone like Doug would have figured out an easier way to do that, but alas, we're not Doug. So it was a more difficult route. What do you guys think about this report?
It's great.
It's a lot of information in a small space.
Yeah, because we have to think about the target audience for this. They're printing the report on a letter-size paper, right? And they want as much information as possible without it being too crowded. And this is the layout for that report in Fox Pro. Looks like fun, right? And this is how we handled it from the data layer. So that's the data behind this report. So we had the child cursor pre-format the data, and therefore, when we come to the reporting layer, we're just saying just spit out the rows. Don't worry about flowing columns. Just look row by row for the data. So this is an example of how you can have the data layer actually format information for you in preparation for the reporting layer. Yes.
You mean populate the data?
Yeah. So we're running our queries, we're pulling information, and we're storing them into these cursors.
You populate the data, and then the report can.
And then the reporting layer, right? So guys, what I'm saying is not necessarily using the Visual Fox Pro data environment under the report to build it. Separating it out in a separate program that does all the work, collates the data, formats it, and then have the data layer just be a dumb printout. Just print it out row by row. All right.
Are you storing strings or numbers? In
Both.
The child cursor.
Both.
A little bit of strings and numbers. Both.
Yeah. But as you can see here, this handled the row formatting. I know Fox Pro has something we can do like flowing rows. Mm-hmm. You guys have done that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never found that really easy to use. It's a little bit tricky. Yeah.
You have no control.
Yeah. So I find that doing it in the data layer like this gives us a little bit more control. So essentially we're moving from, you can actually see the data behind this. The child has the repeating data at the bottom that, flows, and the parent has the static stuff up top. Okay. Any questions about this, guys? Anybody has done reports like this? You have? Similar. And so you approach it from the data layer in terms of formatting the information. Okay. All right. So that was an example of a typical report. But keep in mind that Fox Pro is not the only reporting layer. And if you want to print or preview a report, then this is the main platform to use to design your reports. This is true if you're using report listeners, custom listeners, or third-party report handlers like Echios FRX. How many of us use that? Okay. We didn't use that. We found it was a little bit complicated, so we kind of wrote our own listeners instead. However, depending on the target for your data, Excel, PowerPoint, etc., are other types of reporting layers to consider, as well as things like C# or Python. So the key takeaway, the reporting layer thinks it's the most important aspect of this scheme. And for printing or previewing, sure. It's a star, everybody really sees it. And sometimes the layout of the report may drive how the data layer prepares the actual data. And FoxPro is not your only available layer to you. So how do we put this all together?
I love it. I love the sandbox. Thank you.
So we need a form that can bring the two parties together. Because we're not using the FoxPro data environment within the report, we need something that can pull the two together, that loads the data and then presents it to the user. All right, so we need to have something that allows us to define what the report layout is, a method that can accept the data function and any other additional parameters that the data function may need. So this is an example of a fancy report handler, right? Its job is to accept the data, the report layer, accept the data parameters, and internally it should take care of the error handling and validation of all the various report parameters. What else could be added to this, guys? Well, we could add filtering to this, right? So if your data layer is separate, it means that you can also manipulate the data before it's presented to the reporting layer. So we could add filtering, we could add sorting. All that is done because we're separating it from the FoxPro's report data environment. All right. So these are the methods that we have in our function that do the real work. So let's take a look. Okay, we can close this, and we need our form. I think it's called report something. Report handler. Oh, RPT. Okay, so this is the form. And let's look at some of our methods. Do you guys find that when you click up, you can see all the additional, or is this unique to me?
Depends on the position of the window.
Yeah.
Down a little bit here, it'll be okay.
Yeah, sometimes that doesn't really work. Let's get this down. Okay, so let's look at our load data. All right, so this is meant to be generic to work with any type of data. So it runs the data method that you specify on your form. If it's in a program with additional parameters, if it has parameters. If not, run the function, or if it has no parameters and it's a function in a program, this is how it's handled. Looks tricky, guys? Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. And then let's look at that's our load data. Let's look at our print preview. Calls our load data, right? And then it looks for our report layout that we specified. And then does a report form, preview from blah, blah, blah. And handles it if it's not specified properly. And then we need to clean up. We could have used our close table function. All right. So that's our function that is there. And let's look at an example of some data for that. So here we go, guys. So let's look at report customers. Okay, so here we use. We open the customers table, we run it to our cursor, and that's our data, right? We close the original file. All customers now have our data. So that could be a report by itself. Specify report data customers as the data source, and specify FRX that then wants to use that kind of data. Here's one for data shipped. We can now say, do report customers in report data. So get me all the customers, right? Because we already done that before. And then if the all customers cursor is open, then let's get some additional data. Open these files, run a query, and now we have our data in all customers. So here again, this is the data environment all by itself. And then if there's a matching FRX, you could then use this, or if this is going to Excel or to PowerPoint, the data is there. Okay. So I imagine that you guys have some version of this to handle your reports. Or does XFRX do this for you guys? No. So you guys write your own report managers that then allow you to send the FRX and send the data also. How many of us embed the data in our reports? Nobody uses the FoxPro data environment to post your data? Okay, great. All right. So let's move forward. Okay, we'll look at the code. Okay, key takeaways about the handler. Having a properly designed handler allows you to quickly build new reports with data. And so you're not focusing on the aspects of building and compiling and storing the information in the report designer. You build your data layer by itself, you build a report by itself, and then the handler combines everything for you. It's as simple as that. All right, let's look at using Excel as a reporting layer. So Doug did a session about advanced reporting, and Doug discussed how easy it was to send your FoxPro generated data to Excel. He talked about using Greg Green's workbook XLS to manipulate data in Excel to create really cool spreadsheets and modern XLX files. XLSX files.
We all struggle with that.
Yeah. And then Doug, in his session last year, talked about using templates to assist with building and generating complex Excel documents. Let's build on some of those ideas that Doug talked about, but in a slightly different way. All right. So we have three options to deploy an Excel. We can create a templates folder in the on the client's server. So a templates file, guys, it's an Excel spreadsheet that you'd create that has everything that you already need to properly present the data. The only thing missing is the data. So we can put a templates folder on the client server. And the pros of this is that, you know, the client can modify the template, can add stuff, remove, change it how they want. That's the pros. The cons are the client can modify the template and change it, right? Which can mess up the report, and then they call you, and yeah.
We call it revenue stream.
Sure. You can store the template in a table, right? And then convert it to a file when we need. Pros of this, right? That's good, right? The client can modify it, but you have the original. So you can always overwrite it, right? When the client messes it up and say, okay, start back from here. But the cons of this, you have to redeploy the table if you make changes. Or both of the above. You can have the template stored in a table, deploy to a folder. The client says, deploy to a folder. The client can then manipulate it, and they have their own custom version, while you maintain an original version that you can then also deploy. And that's the best of both worlds. All right. Original files can be regenerated. Okay, generate an Excel report. By the way, how many of us use templates for clients' reports? Yeah. No? Why use templates? Why you use templates, Doug? To give clients flexibility?
The exact reason that you said, that they can modify the template and change the way it appears if they want to.
How many times do you find that they actually mess up the template?
I don't know that that's happened yet. I don't know if they've actually modified them.
Right,
They
exactly.
can,
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
not.
So we have the same thing. We give it to the clients, and nobody changes it.
Yeah.
They call us to then make a change to it.
Every month they like to change the statement for environmental, how they're saving the planet, so they go in there and doctor that up, and then I use that Excel sheet to build it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure.
But I'm just saying that they have something that we call a quote template.
Yeah.
Only it's Excel sheet that's, it's a template to them because they know we're just going to be reading from it and then writing to that's a blank one except for this has this little message, and
Yeah.
call it a template because they get to doctor it and they manage it.
Sure.
I'm not maintaining. I'm not having to go.
Yeah. So they manage it themselves and maintain it themselves.
They know it's just the beginning of something that's going to get filled, like the way you're going to fill it, and then they know that that's the output. That's the word you use.
Yeah. All right. So for example, we're going to go the easy route where the client won't mess with it. So we're going to create a spreadsheet. We're going to store it in our templates table. Then we're going to generate the Excel file from that template data, insert our real data or XML data into it, and then generate a pivot chart, a pivot and a pie chart from the data, and then save it. All right, so create a spreadsheet. So typically we create a spreadsheet with the headers, fancy stuff, if you have multiple worksheets on it, we create that and we save that. No data, right? And then we pull that into our table. And let's look at how we do that. Let's look for, I think it says Excel. Okay. Okay. So we load our data from our report data. Remember that, guys? All orders that we looked at earlier. So that's our data. We sometimes, for Excel, or depending on the target, we then need to modify that resulting data to be properly formatted for the target. So the customer only wanted these columns on the report or on the Excel file. So we do another query that spits out exactly only what they want from it. And then we use cursor to XML to convert that cursor to an XML file, right? So that's the data there. And then we have our templates stored into our template database. And you guys are already familiar with file to string and string to file, right? So we store it there, and we use string to file to pull the data out, to pull the template out into our target sheet. And that file is created. And we use our nice close table to make sure things are closed up properly. We check to make sure we actually got something. That's data there. And the file now exists. And then we fire up Excel. I like to actually run things like these and do a trace. So, okay. Let's get some light here. I may need my glasses. All right, so let's step through some code. So here in our report data, looked at this before. We're opening the table, and of course, guys, nobody does this, right? Nobody hard codes parts into your code. It's just for demonstration purposes. All right, let's look at our open table function. We're saying open this table. Let's dive in. So we say that's the table. Can everybody see this properly?
Mhm.
All right. And then we get the alias from this long string with the table and the path. In our try, we check if it was used. Okay, it wasn't used. Let's select a new work area. Was it exclusive? If not, okay, let's open it. Was there an order? Nope, there wasn't. Okay. Table opened. True. Okay. Table opened. And does the same. Yes, continue, continue, continue. Which means that all tables are opened successfully. So if continue, let's manipulate this some more to get exactly what we want from it, right? So run a query successful, and then we close the original files. Want to run in total? Let's do a run in total. So that's updated. And we say, okay, that's our data. So is it used? Let's modify the contents just for the Excel spreadsheet and close the original cursor because our data is now in all orders too. And then let's convert it to XML and put it in this file. And then load our template, create our Excel spreadsheet that has the headers. And if everything's okay, then we fire up Excel. And let's get you over here. Okay. And then let's go back to our debugger. All right, so we do display alerts, and you guys know what that does, right? Display alerts equal false. It basically tells Excel to shut up. If something goes wrong and there's a problem, don't say anything, right? So display alerts. Don't ask if I'm sure. Blah blah. Just do it. And we're gonna open our Excel file that we created that has the headers. Looks familiar, right? Just like what we had before. We set our active worksheet, and now we open our XML file that has our data. How many of us use the open XML feature? No? So this opens an XML file in Excel, right? Nicely formatted and stuff. I think Doug, you used something else. You use Greg's function
No, actually, I had done it in the template and linked it to the file. And then all I had to do was refresh the data.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even realize that's a great function.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that one.
Yeah. So this opens the file in XML, as an XML file in Excel. And then we then have that as a workbook.
It opens it as a table automatically?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
You make the font a little bigger and font.
Oh, for the debugger?
Right here, yeah.
Sure. How's that?
Still hard to read. I'm gonna bring my glasses I drive with
I was
me.
gonna say,
It's a little better. I think it's
pretty clear from here.
All right. So this function here, it returns a range of data. It says start from cell A2 and give me that block of data. Right? This contiguous block. And that's what special cells 11 does. It jumps to the last cell of data. So that gives me my entire sheet of data. And then I use the copy function and say with my copy this to my original sheet and start in cell A3. So if you look here, that's our new sheet. And we're gonna say, write it there.
Is that the clipboard, the Windows clipboard you're using?
It's not Windows clipboard. It's actually Excel that's storing it to some object.
So it's not in the clipboard.
No.
I need to do that myself. I need to learn how to do that.
I find that this works really fast, especially if you have hundreds of thousands of records. When I use any other method to kind of get this data in, it's really slow. But if I use this and say, grab all the rows, copy it, and put it here, boom, instantly, 10,000 records. It's there. All right. And our sample thing has how many records? I'm not even sure. And down. That's like, 2,000 records. And that was like instantly copied over. Yeah. All right, so we like to clean up. So we need to close the temporary workbook that had the XML file. So we say close, and then we delete that XML file because we no longer need it. And then we close the cursor because we have our data in Excel already. All right, so now we need to grab the block of data now because we want to convert this data now to an Excel table. So use our same special cells function and say, give me everything as a range, throw it to this object, and then in the range, let's make this pretty. Let's do an auto fit. So everything looks good. And then we now convert the range to a table with this function in Excel. So boom, it's a table. I like using tables. Tables gives you a lot more control of your data in Excel. All right, and then with that table, it's nice to give things names. So let's give it a name. Tell it we want to have totals, and we want to have a last column style, and we want to calculate the totals for quantity and discount. So there it is for quantity. There it is for discount. And then let's make it look pretty. So let's format it properly. Let's carry this over a little bit some more. So we do some formatting. Grab this here. Put you up here. And let's format that as numbers, blah, blah. So it looks a little bit more presentable. And then go back to cell A1 as if we did nothing at all. And then this template had another sheet for pivots and charts. So let's select that sheet in an object. And then let's create a pivot cache. And let's look at that sheet over here. And let's create a pivot table with that data. And from that, we add the fields. I mean, it's a little bit bigger for you guys. We add those fields, we summarize it, and there's our pivot. So a few lines of code, and there's our pivot in Excel. And let's create a pie chart. Go to cell like that. Add the chart object. Gives us a default chart. Sure. Let's call it employee sales. Let's make it a pie chart instead. Show field buttons, apply labels.
Pardon me.
Bam. And that's it. Right? And let's activate. So go back to the original worksheet and save and quit Excel. How's that, guys? Pretty simple, right? Pretty straightforward. No, I agree. It's a lot more work to do it this way, but doing it in Excel, using Excel code, gives you ultimate control. You can do whatever you want to do as long as you know what the Excel function is. And of course, as Doug had said in his presentation, do a macro, record the macro to see what the function is in Excel. But you can create really complicated spreadsheets with this. All right. And the key to this is, because usually the slow part in this is getting your data from Fox Pro into Excel. And I've tried to use Greg's XLS thingy to save. And because our app deals with hundreds of thousands of records, it's just sometimes just too slow for us. But Cursor to XML is really, really fast. And then open XML in Excel, gets the data in Excel immediately for you. And because we're not looping through to figure out, which rows have data with our special cells select to the last row function, we grab everything in one go and say, okay, put it over here. All right. Any questions about that? Yes, Dave.
That assumes that your client has Excel.
Yes, and that's why try catch is very important.
The 32-bit Excel, 32-bit Office.
32-bit, exactly. Yeah. So in our app, we have a function that checks to make sure Excel is actually there before. And if Excel isn't there, it says, Excel isn't there. It creates the spreadsheet still because we have it in the template. But the spreadsheet by default says you don't have Excel or you don't have the right version of Excel, because sometimes it's a version issue. And that's what they see in the end. Sorry, a question?
I'm just curious. We run our software on RDP remote, so we
Sure.
50 users on one virtual desktop. Would we still be able to do this? You got Excel on that?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Right, Doug? Yeah, it would work quite fine because you're opening Excel as a when you're writing our code, sometimes we have Excel running as 10 different copies of Excel running as objects in memory. And sometimes we don't close them out properly because something crashes and it stops, and you go to Task Manager, you see 20 Excels running. So yeah, that would not be an issue with that. All right.
But you do have to keep in mind in an RDP environment, memory usage, particularly.
Sure, of course, yeah. With any machine, you're gonna use up in memory for that.
And obviously, you have to have the right Office license to let you run Excel
Right.
in an RDP environment.
Yeah.
Well, that's for the client to figure out. That's not our concern.
Just mentioned as a virtual audience, you're talking about RDP.
Oh, yeah. So, yes, we're talking about RDP virtual, guys.
One more thing, at least what I do, and I assume you do it also, if you open up Excel in FoxPro, I always make it non-visible until I'm done, and then I make it visible because it runs faster.
Sure,
Of
sure.
course, if you crash, then you got a Excel hanging out there.
Yeah.
Sure. As Dave was saying, when he runs it, he makes sure Excel is not visible, right? Because that's a lot faster to process stuff. We only have Excel visible just to show you guys what's happening. But typically, Excel is invisible, and you do your stuff. That's much faster.
How about minimize?
No, that'll still be
Excel,
slow.
you know those words, Excel minimize from Bill Gates? I just do that. Then it's there
Yeah.
on the taskbar, and it's because the other way, it's like, it says Excel's open. I have to tell them, well, you have to go find it. You know.
Well, I mean, we run code in the end to activate Excel to then bring up the worksheet. You know, it'll start an Excel spreadsheet, will bring it up, so the client will see that afterwards. Yes, Charles.
Do you have any experience with Google Sheets or any other spreadsheets? We're finding a lot of our customers are getting out of using Excel and switching to.
So because we're using the macros from Excel, it's kind of specific just to Excel. I think OpenOffice has something similar to this. Has anybody tried something like that? Probably Christoph. OpenOffice to generate code in Excel.
Automating open
Automating, yeah.
is apparently extremely.
Oh, it's difficult.
Yeah. 'Cause they
Yeah.
really build it for Com is a Windows thing.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Any more questions, guys? So I guess so Greg's XLS stuff will work for situations where you don't have Excel.
Correct.
Yeah. But if you want to have total control and build something more custom, the client has to have Excel on the machine for that. All right. Let's continue.
Well, if the client really doesn't want to do additional calculations
Yeah.
in the Excel spreadsheet, why not just generate a report that looks the same?
In Excel?
No.
Just as a text file or XML file? Sure. You have that option. If the client doesn't have Excel, yeah, generate XML file. That's fine. Yeah. Yes. Let's.
If you like to do that, you can also run macros that belong to the template. That's what I do.
So you embed the macros in your
I know
templates.
what to call.
Okay, and then you call the macros from that. Yeah, that's a good way to approach it also. Yeah.
My code will let me save macros. It just won't. The network's too paranoid. They won't let me save macros.
Yeah, we
You know
find
what I'm
that also.
saying?
Yeah, and the clients can open the macro spreadsheets. Yeah. But I find that this way gives you a completely formatted spreadsheet. Everything is there. Sure. Okay. Let's move on. All right. So our takeaways: templates are great for reports that don't change, or for clients that won't mess up your stuff. You have a lot of power in creating charts and pivot tables. Doing this way gives you guys a lot of power and gives the clients a consistent reporting experience. Let's look at using C#. So C# may have some small advantages over FoxPro. But C# is really awesome. It does a lot of stuff. And there are amazing things that we can take advantage of C# functions from right within FoxPro. How many of us use Rick Straw's www.net bridge? Awesome, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I use it also to do a lot of stuff. We're not going to use that here. We're going to do the old-fashioned FoxPro DLL way. Right? You guys have done that FoxPro DLL? Yeah. We use the FoxPro DLL for our .NET applications to speak to our reporting, our data layer. All right, so create a new FoxPro object, right? As a business class, as a OLE. Let's take a quick look at that. Let's open our next project. I find that Project Explorer sometimes takes a while to come up. You experience that, Doug?
A little bit sometimes, yeah. It's a big project.
All right, and let's do our sample project. All right, and let's look at our business object. Let's just go through this quickly. Pretty straightforward. We create a class. We use our friend, report all orders in that. If it was used, dump it to XML, return the document. Pretty easy, right, guys?
Yeah.
All right. And we would build that as a multi-threaded COM object. And then in C#, so that creates a DLL. We then add that COM reference in C#. Looks like that. The C# code does get a little bit tricky. We don't have time to go through all that code. But we run a simple function in C# that looks at the XML and displays it as a HTML table in a spreadsheet. So all the work there is done in your reporting layer using your existing report, the existing cursors that are queries that you worked before for your reporting data layer. Call it from your business object. Send it to C#. C# does its stuff with it. Boom, your job is done. All right. And this is what our reporting manager looks like that we use. A little bit more complicated. We send files to different output formats. We allow filtering, sorting, previewing, send it to Excel. We also incorporate using templates in this. So we can predefine, with our structure, we can predefine that this report has a template. So if the client says send it to Excel, do this template, load it up first, grab the data, do this, and then present it in Excel to it. So we have that built into our application. We also have built-in filtering because, again, the data is not in the FoxPro report environment. You can manipulate it this way, filter it on stuff, so the client can get exactly what they want on the report. All right, and in summary, design a structure that handles separation, so you can separate your data from your report layer. Cursors make our life so much easier, whether they are pass-through, SQL pass-throughs, or manually generating them to store your data. They're awesome. Reports should be source agnostic. So when you do your reports, don't have the alias in the field name, because this means that you can use different sources. Once the fields are there, the alias doesn't really matter. So that's kind of important. You have many options for your reporting layer. FoxPro, as we talked about, your primary tool for previewing. Crystal Reports is another one. Power BI, Excel, those are all available. Dashboards or even your custom applications are available for you. Yeah, reports are kind of important in our app, right? As we say, they're like the star, and they give other people who don't have the pleasure to see your app a little experience in what you can do. And there are various types of reporting layers that you guys can use. And that is it. Thank you very much for your time and your patience.